Good morning and welcome to Mobility Matters. I'm your host, Javier Betancourt, Executive Director of the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, or CITT. We're the agency of Miami-Dade County charged with overseeing your half-penny sales tax for transportation and implementation of the People's Transportation Plan. Broadcasting live out of these wonderful studios at community newspapers here in South Miami. We want to thank our partners in crime here at Community Newspapers for continuing to host and produce this show. So speaking of the CITT, we've had amazing members over the years, and one no better than the one sitting next to me, Eric Diaz-Padron, who is a former CITT member, but more importantly, current mayor of the great city of West Miami. Mr. Mayor, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, and it's always great to see you. And it's been a couple of years now since we worked together, but it was a great time and we accomplished a lot.
It has been a couple of years, but you haven't changed. You're still in your 20s, right, for one more year, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's going to end soon. So.
And you were really young when you joined us. How old were you? Do you remember?
I was about 21, 22 at the time. So I'm sure you were super excited to have a new member in the beginning of your 20s.
I love that, It's great to have perspectives, along the entire spectrum. And you were by far the youngest member, so it was great to have you on there.
Well, when I came on, we were in the midst of, it was you had just started as executive director, and you had just started your crusade on the unwinding.
That's right.
Of the PTP, of the half penny, and you accomplished it. So that was a huge success.
With a lot of help from others.
Yes, but it was very important, and that was something that was necessary to move the ball forward finally, as opposed to looking back. Absolutely.
Now, is it true that you were, when you were elected, the youngest mayor in the state of Florida? I thought I read something to that effect.
I was. Excellent. I'm getting older every day, so that's become less true. But at the time I was, and I served. I was the youngest mayor in the state of Florida, but I was already a couple of years on the commission.
That's right.
And I think, so it wasn't just like I ran for office, coming out of college and decided I was going to run for mayor. I went through the process. I studied under people like yourself in boards, and then served a couple of years on the commission before getting, frankly, too frustrated. I mean, I was telling you a story prior to this show. My city is the city of that Marco Rubio came out of. He was a city commissioner. And I remember seeing videos of when he served with my father back when he was in his 20s. It was his later 20s.
Your father had been mayor of West Miami.
My father had been the mayor of West Miami while he was in the commission. And I remember he was just so frustrated in some of these videos. And he would literally say, "Can we just do anything?
Yeah.
Do one thing, do anything." And I was a couple of years on the commission, and I had the same frustration. And it came to the point that I had 2 years left in my term, my 4-year term, and I said, I can either sit here for 2 more years doing nothing, or I can run, at the time against an incumbent who was not a bad person at all. And I decided to take that leap. So I went from being on the losing side of 4-1 votes to now being, putting forth a robust agenda that we've gotten accomplished in the last, 2.5 years, and it's been very exciting.
Yeah, no, I've always known you to be a very action-oriented person. So,
well, that's a good thing to know for.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, tell us a little bit more about the city of West Miami. I know it's one of the smaller cities in the county, but as I say, it punches above its weight. Where is the city? What's the geography? What are some of the things that characterize?
Yeah, so the city is perfectly located in the county. I mean, you can't get more central. They call it West Miami, but it's not west of anything. It's west of Coral Gables, maybe. So the city is right next to Coral Gables, across 57th Avenue, right across from City of Miami, across 8th Street. And again, just located right in the center of the county.
Near the airport? I mean, just near everything.
It's near everything. It's one of the reasons that prices have gone up so much in West Miami. Unfortunately, depending on who you are, it's because it's, aside from everything, aside from the community, and aside from the safety, aside from everything else that the city offers, it's just perfectly located in this county. It's a small city, like you said. It's about, real numbers, about 11,000 residents. We have our own police department, we have our own services, our own permitting, our own public works. So it's really a great place to live, where you can get a lot of dedicated service in this county.
And it's always been so well run. And I have to give a shout out to Yolanda Aguilar, if she's watching, former city manager and a distant relative of mine. So
absolutely, yeah. Great. She was one of the longest serving managers in the county part of history. So her, as there was a transition. There was we had so many people that served so many years with so much institutional knowledge of the city. And in my first term of mayor, there was a transition. A lot of people just retired for obvious reasons, just time. And we had to transition, bring in a new manager, bring in new public works, bring in a bunch of new executive level people. And thankfully, we chose to do this in a very professional way, in the sense I didn't hire anybody who I was friends with.
Right.
We hired people who were very professional hires, who have hit the ground running. And by doing so, we've actually been able to accomplish pretty much all of my campaign promises.
That's great.
Within the first term.
So speaking of your promises and what the city is doing well, I know that transportation is obviously very near and dear to your heart. It's why you served on the CITT. And I should say you also serve as a member of the Transportation Planning Organization, the TPO. I think you were the governor's appointee?
Yes, I have to thank the governor and the lieutenant governor for the opportunity and the honor of serving there.
So tell us a little bit about what the city is doing with respect to transportation, starting with, I think you run an on-demand service, right?
Yeah, so back when I was on the CTT, you guys used to give us these lists that would show the trolleys and other on-demand options and their usage in each city. And I remember looking at that list, and I was from West Miami, and I remember seeing West Miami was on the bottom of that list, and it wasn't because of alphabetical, it was because we had like no ridership at all on this fixed route trolley that we had. So while I was on the commission, we switched to on-demand service, freebie, and the ridership has exploded. I mean, to the point that it justifies adding more vehicles, which you wouldn't expect in a small geographic area. But there's a cost to that. So the half penny only covers so much. Right.
But you're using that also to like leverage grants. I think you had an FDOT grant, right?
Yeah. We're our focus on the on-demand aspect, and we're playing with a map. It actually goes outside of the city to places that are relevant. Obviously, as the SMART plan continues to advance, that's going to be an integral part to getting riders to that centers of mass transit, or to the buses to send, making that organized. But right now, we're just focused on moving as many people, taking as many cars off the street, and making it easier for people. Especially, the freebie has been extremely popular with our more elderly residents. Sure. Extremely popular.
Get to services, the groceries, the doctors, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, the ridership, the data is much more than I would have expected. And so it's a good problem to have.
Great. So you mentioned the SMART plan, so let's dive into that. And the SMART plan, again, for those who don't know, is the Strategic Miami Area Rapid Transit Plan. It's a plan to expand rapid transit along 6 corridors throughout the county, but one is very close to the city of West Miami, and that's the East-West corridor. So what are your thoughts on the East-West corridor? I know originally it was going to be BRT on the Dolphin Expressway. Now they're toying with some ideas on Flagler. How involved are you, and what are your thoughts on what should be done there?
Sure. So I was, while I was on the CITT, I was also part of the planning advisory group that put forth what ended up becoming the local preferred alternative of the BRT. Frankly, that should, like everything else, should probably be scrapped. And I think I'm in favor of something like elevated rail down the corridor. That's a super important corridor, obviously, because it includes FIU, includes other massive institutions. I don't know that it's not going to be the first corridor to be built. That's for sure. And we're still at the nascent stages. We're still debating whether it should be BRT or something else. And it's the most complicated to figure out. I'm in favor of looking at, again, I say because I'm hoping that in this process there's some innovations in mass transit that allow us to build cheaper with less footprint. But I'm in favor of something like that. BRT, the way it was designed, even now, even if you're a believer in BRT in this corridor, which I'm not, the access points for West Miami, for North Gables, for Flagami weren't very good from a to actually access transit. So even if that was something that we move forward with, it would have to be played with a lot to make sure that the station's accesses were actually relevant to my area and North Gables and areas around it.
Right, even Blue Lagoon. I mean, there's a lot kind of going on in that area, right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, look, in a perfect world, we would have
Waterford. I'm sorry, they don't call it Blue Lagoon anymore. Waterford.
Yeah. In a perfect world, you would have transit options and a whole different, array. We've discussed in the past with mayors in South Miami, Coral Gables, a shuttle that runs down 57th Avenue, right? We're not there. We're still getting the basics of how to get people to the mass transit and getting the mass transit to be, going to everywhere that needs to go. Right. But there's a lot of potential and a lot of different routes that we can eventually implement that will move people essentially anywhere they need to go.
And I know that equally important to the rapid transit lines, as hard as that is to do, once those are in place, you then need to connect the surrounding neighborhoods and cities to it through first, last mile connectivity. Because you're probably going to be just, you're not going to be right on the line, right? You're a little further out. But I know that the city, through things like Freebie, but then also through bicycle pedestrian infrastructure, is doing a lot to plan for that first, last mile connectivity. What are some of the things you're doing, especially with bicycle pedestrian connectivity?
Sure. So we just got a TPO grant, actually, to do a design phase of a pedestrian activated bike path walkway. Mm-hmm. As I go down 16th Street. 16th Street is important because it has connectivity to the Lupton Trail. Yep. And we're hoping that the Lupton Trail is going to be one of those connectors, one of those great connectors from a bike and pedestrian, perspective. I did have the opportunity to go on a TPO trip that was focused on just bike infrastructure. And I think that was
at the invitation of the Dutch cycling embassy, right?
The Dutch cycling embassy.
Yeah, the TPO bike immersion trip. Yeah.
Yes, and it was fascinating. But what I liked most about it is the distinction that was made between the needs of recreational bikers. Mm-hmm. The spandex biker who needs to go miles and miles and miles uninterrupted.
The road warriors, as we call them. Yeah.
We call them road warriors. And the commuter biker, right? And the commuter biker needs, you're within 2 miles, 3 miles in this heat of a transit stop, of somewhere where you can access transit. And how do you get that person being able to bike there safely, unintimidated, without being somebody who's used to being on a bike in Miami, which is can be very intimidating if you're just using I was laughing with you. I used to see you. You haven't. I don't think you've done it in a while, but I appreciate you. You walk the walk. You used to bike to all the way downtown almost, right?
To work, about 10 miles, yeah.
Yeah, and I used to see you out there. I said, "Who's this crazy guy?" And it
somehow survived. That's great. So we kind of jumped straight into policy and city stuff. We forgot to talk about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background and how did you kind of get into public service? And what are some of the things that, sure. Where did you go to school? Tell us about you.
Yeah. So I grew up in Miami, obviously, right? I'm homegrown. I went to FIU for undergrad, went to University of Miami for law school. And while I was in high school still, I liked the political stuff. Frankly,
high school was Belen, right?
The Belen Jesuit, yes.
You're checking all the boxes. You're very Miami, man. You got Teresa, if I'm not mistaken, St. Teresa.
St. Teresa, Belen. I did a year of Revere Day School
okay, got them all.
before going to Belen. But Belen was a fantastic experience, and I'm very active there. But when I was there, I got the political bug. Though to be honest with you, I never thought I would run for office. And the reason for that wasn't some moral thing. It was I was a big stutterer growing up, and to overcome that, I never thought I would be speaking in public or doing any of these things. I wouldn't even raise my hand in class or put the days you have to read for the Bible in church. Those were very intimidating days. So
it's intimidating regardless, but I can imagine. Yeah.
but overcoming that allowed me to get into politics, speaking, constantly publicly. From there, I joined campaigns. My senior year, I was helping out very much with campaigns in Coral Gables. Yeah. Went to college, became president of the College Republicans there quickly, and joined Congressman Curbello's initial campaign as one of his first volunteers. And from there, that was a very active young group of people, all who've gone off to do great things around politics. And it reminds me of the Bob Dole 96 campaign people always talk about. And from there, honestly, everything just kept spiraling positively towards community involvement. And I think that's when I got the appointment to be in the Millennial Task Force, which transitioned into my transit policy work with you and the CITT,
Right.
which transitioned to an appointment to the City Commission in West Miami, and subsequently a re-election, and then ultimately an election as mayor. So it all stems from a very involved part. When I was in College Republicans, I was frustrated because we were playing campus politics, and I really wanted to deal with real policy, because I truthfully, I don't love the political part of it. I like the policy side of it a lot more. So I was glad to have the opportunity so early to be able to do that.
So I think you're a great example, for anyone watching or young people in Miami-Dade County. Sometimes it seems so daunting, right? You're frustrated by a lot of things, but you don't feel like you can be a part of the solution. The reality is there's so many opportunities in Miami. It's actually very open and very welcoming if you want to be involved, right? And I think that's the perfect example. Start off somewhere, working either on the political side or even for nonprofits. People welcome you with open arms. This isn't, a place where there's an old guard kind of trying to keep you out.
Yeah,
has that been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's 2 points to that. Number one, people always ask for advice. How do you get involved? Like, how do you start off? And I know everyone gives the same advice, but it's still true. The best way to get involved is on the campaign side, right? The campaign you believe in, right? Even if the person has no shot, right? My first campaign that I actually worked on, we lost 70-30. Now, this whole time I was young, so this whole time I thought we were going to win. So I was very shocked on election day when we got slaughtered.
Youthful idealism.
Yeah, youthful idealism. But that was the best experience that could have ever happened. I met so many people, even on a losing campaign. You make so many connections, you learn so much.
And by the way, you learn as much, if not more, from failure than you do from success, and that's what all entrepreneurs will tell you. Then
100%, and the campaign side is no different. I mean, first, if you've only seen successful campaigns, you probably don't know what you're doing wrong, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's something that I had the benefit of being on some losing campaigns early on to be able to see that.
It's better to do those earlier than later.
Yeah,
get them out of the way.
Get them out of the way. But it's Then the other thing is obviously, there is opportunities to serve even as a younger person or an older person who just wants to get involved at a pivot to get involved. There's a lot of boards at different levels, whether city level, county level, that are vacant. And sometimes they don't fit exactly what the person's exact policy view is, or not view, scope is. But there's a lot of good that can be done on advisory levels, and there's a lot you can learn how the process works from those boards. And I would encourage anyone to contact their representatives and see if there's any board, because most of these county commissioners, for example, even TPO members especially, have a lot of vacancies on their advisory boards, and they need people to fill them too.
Right. And in fact, we have 3 vacancies on the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, and we're actively looking for folks to fill those. So if you're interested in transportation policy and want to be part of the solution, go to our website, miamidade.gov/CITT, and apply to become a member. I think it would be fantastic. It's amazing how few applicants we get, and we advertise and we talk about it everywhere, but there's something about serving that a lot of people in Miami, either they're not interested or they're not getting the information. I don't know what it is.
Are you telling me the half penny isn't sexy?
I think that Abraham Lincoln on the side of the buses is pretty sexy.
I don't know half of it is, but yeah, I mean, one of the things
full penny would be much sexier. We'd love that, but we're not there.
I'm not advocating for that. There's I would say transit policy, as much as I love it because it's one of Miami's 2 or 3 most major issues as a city,
right,
is such a thankless policy. I mean, you're really, as much as you can be right on the issues, you're never going to please everyone. Right. And on top of that, the progress has been so slow that there's understandable frustration
Absolutely.
In the community that is, you haven't done anything, which I share. I mean, that's seemingly, there's a lot of planning and not a lot of infrastructure on the ground.
So one of the things that I know that you're doing to help resolve that is on the policy side. One of the reasons things take so long to get done is because you have this federal permitting process, right? What they call the PD&E process and the NEPA process. And I think you're actively working on behalf of the TPO, presumably, to maybe have those policies changed to expedite the process. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I passed an item, sponsored the item at the TPO level to amend federal legislative priorities. So where we send our federal lobbyists to work on the streamlining the process generally to put infrastructure in the ground. After we've all decided that this, let's say it's called North Corridor, Northeast Corridor, after we've all decided this is where we're going to go, there's still a massive process to actually build it. Let's say we get the money, let's say we get all, we have all the properties, we know exactly what we want to do. There's now a years and years long process to get through permitting before we can even build it, right? That's not even on our side locally. That's mostly the federal side. So I've been working with the executive director, Eileen Bouclé, who's a fantastic professional.
Amazing. Hi, Eileen.
No BS. She's one of the best government, executive directors, executives I've ever worked with. I've been working with her to plan out a reform that we're proposing the federal government to streamline that process, reform NEPA, and just make it a much more efficient process. I mean, I gave the example of the North Corridor, which is one that is a very obvious corridor that has been stuck in the environmental review stage for a long time. We got, it's been 20 plus years of environmental reviews. We got there. We had a record of approval, and it took too long to get it passed. So now we got to go back to square one.
I know.
And it's a very frustrating process.
And meanwhile, the environment hasn't really changed that much. And so it's like, why do we have to do this again?
No, and I think the reform is look, just talking politically now, I think the reform is something that will be accepted generally.
Yeah.
If you're a Republican, cutting red tape is always, top of your ticket. If you're, Republican or a Democrat, the equity that transit brings actually built transit and people being able to afford, where they live because the area expands. Now you can live farther away from your job because you can get there cheaply and quickly. And there's a bunch of obvious reasons why everyone should back reform of NEPA. It's frankly, it's an overdone middleman at this point. And, like you said, the environment hasn't changed. We've already done the reviews.
Right.
We're in a place everyone says environmental studies and people kind of cringe. They don't want to hurt the environment, right? They don't want to do something that's impacting.
Of course.
But I think we're blessed in Miami where no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, most people, and I say, 90% of even elected officials have a very good understanding that the environment is something we need to protect here. Tourism is such a massive industry. If you're just looking from a business perspective, the environment is massive, right, aside from everything else. So no one's suggesting that you cut corners on reviewing environmental impacts. It's the bureaucracy of it that you want to cut.
Yeah. And look, let's be honest. It's not like we're running this thing through the Everglades. I mean, it's 27th Avenue. It's been studied before. And you couldn't do anything better for the environment than to try and get people out of their cars into transit. And so, delaying that is actually worse for the environment than expediting it, right? So it makes all the sense in the world. So thank you for taking the lead on that.
No, absolutely.
Are you optimistic? Are you seeing, an openness to that in DC? Like,
I'm optimistic. We're still building out the reform internally. I have had conversations with our federal partners. There is an optimism that NEPA reform generally will be coming up in this next session. Now, what that looks like, if it encompasses things that the TPO, I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues, but I think the TPO will want is a question. But NEPA reform, I'd be open to whatever that looks like, frankly.
Well, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I do, before we end, want to just say we didn't talk about your wife and kids because you are a single bachelor, and I just want to put that out there for anyone who might be interested. We have a very eligible bachelor here and a great guy, really. It's been a pleasure to serve with you at the CITT and to work with you now in your new role as mayor of West Miami. You're a great guy, and you have a bright future. So thank you for your service, and thank you for being a guest on the program.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
No, of course. We'll have you on again. So, folks, that's all the time we have here on Mobility Matters. Just as a reminder, you can catch us here every other Thursday from 9 to 10 a.m. and follow us on all our social media platforms, Facebook, X, LinkedIn, Instagram, you name it, we're on there, and you can find all of our programs on there. Once again, if you're interested in serving on the trust or learning more about us, visit our website, miamidade.gov/CITT. And one last shout out to community newspapers for hosting us in this wonderful studio. Thank you, and see you next time.